Okay, turn it over to you, Chair Reed.
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. I am calling this full board meeting together of the Connecticut Green Bank on Friday, October 25th, 2024, and by my clock, at 9:04 a.m. So welcome, everyone. Before I ask for public comments, I think we ought to say a sad goodbye to two of our board members who are doing wonderful things, and they've really they brought fresh eyes and fresh spirit to all of our sessions. So we wish them well, and we'll be interacting with them in different roles going forward. But so Rob Hodling is leaving, has left, and he's going to. So he was the DECD representative, and so he is actually now jointly supporting Commissioner Dan O'Keefe of DECD and Commissioner Boughton on infrastructure, and Hank Webster is supporting strategic areas for Commissioner Dyke. So again, we'll be interacting with them again going forward in different roles, but thank you for your service. And we are welcoming two new board members, Allison Pincus, who will be the DECD designee, and she brings extensive legal and policy experience with a focus on economic development and social justice, which is fabulous. And also Joe DiNicola from DEEP. He's a deputy commissioner. His specialties are corporate and project finance, capital allocation, carbon finance, restructurings, business startup energy, and forestry industry. So, Allison, could you say a brief hello to us?
Yes, of course. Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison Pincus. I'm happy to be here. I am a lawyer by training. I went to Berkeley Law and focused on public interest and policy, as Lonnie said. I came to the state during COVID to work on building and implementing programs in response to the COVID crisis. And now I'm running DECD's federal funds team, where we focus on pursuing grant opportunities that are strategically aligned with furthering economic development in Connecticut. And I'm taking Rob Hodling's, I'm the new designee for Dan O'Keefe on the board, so taking Rob's seat. So very happy to be here and looking forward to working with all of you.
Welcome. And then Joe DiNicola. Is Joe with us? I'd like to hear from you.
I am. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everyone. So Joe DiNicola, I'm taking Hank's spot here on the board as a designee for Commissioner Dykes from DEEP. I am a Connecticut native, grew up here, educated here, but new to the role at DEEP. I've been in this role for just under a year. And prior to that, was a policy advisor to Commissioner Dykes, mostly on material management issues. But my primary experience, as Lonnie, you indicated, is in corporate finance, project finance, 25 plus years with some large corporations doing that kind of work. But I also ran a sustainable forestry company in Argentina for a few years and a nonprofit in Nicaragua for the last 7 years and before joining the DEEP. So a variety of experiences, trained in energy, forestry, and regenerative agriculture. And happy to be here. Looking forward to working with the Green Bank.
Welcome, welcome. But you both are bringing a wealth of expertise, and that's exciting. So let's see. Moving forward, let's. I think it's time for public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay, and I'm hearing nothing. Hearing none. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Let's see, the consent agenda. Brian, did you want to talk about that?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Chair Reed. So we have several items on the consent agenda this morning. Thank you for all of you perusing through the materials that were provided in today's big mailing. We've got our meeting minutes from the last meeting in July, July 26th. We've also got our progress to targets for FY24. So let me just provide some background on that. Our board typically in July looks back at the prior fiscal year impact numbers for our financing programs, incentive programs, and investments, including our target to deliver no less than 40% of investment and benefits to vulnerable communities by 2025. So in July, our data team produces a draft memo that we use over the course of the summer to do the FY24 merit review. And then we come back to the board in October when all of the data for the prior fiscal year is finalized with this final progress to targets report. So that's what you see there. We've got 3 position descriptions, director level position descriptions. Our practice is for any position description, director level or above comes before the board. Anything lower than the director level, I can review and approve as president and CEO of the Green Bank. So we've got 3 position descriptions: a director of innovation, a director of legislative and regulatory affairs, and a deputy general counsel position description. On number 4, we've got our evaluation, measurement, and verification methodology for the Smart E loan. We presented and discussed with the Audit, Compliance, and Governance Committee updating our estimates for energy efficiency, which are based on the program savings document of the Conservation and Load Management Fund. The challenge for us was that we're using an old, I think, 2013 PSD. So we're going to update that to the 2023 PSD. I think the CL&M does that every 3 years. And then we've got our 2025 regular meeting schedule for the board and its committees that's laid out there in terms of those for next year. So those are the items on our consent agenda, and I would ask for a motion to approve resolutions 1 through 5.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved. John Harity.
Do I hear a second?
Second, Kim Morse.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank
Well,
you.
yeah, thank you for that. And then we've got several report outs that we included in the board packet as well. So we've got our organizational progress to targets. The ones that you just approved on the consent were programmatic. So this is just the consolidation of all of our goals and targets. We've also included our memo for transactions that are approved by the staff that are consistent with our comprehensive plan and budget. So the staff can approve of transactions that are individually under $500,000, but no more in aggregate than $1 million. We then report out to either the deployment committee or the board, and the queue clears. So we did add an additional project earlier on this week, an additional CPACE project to that memo. That's why I noted the +1 there. We also included the under 100,000 and no more in aggregate than 500,000 staff approved write-offs or restructurings memo. We report out to the board on any transactions here. And as you'll see from the memo, we're dealing with a number of residential solar lease projects that are going through various write-offs, restructurings. There's some, bad panels that are being reinstalled and projects are being restructured. So you'll see that memo there. We included the Q4 of FY24 financial report, including the memo and the financial statements, the abridged and comprehensive versions, which I sent out earlier this month to you all individually, but this is just included in the board packet. Later on today, you're going to hear our progress to targets for Q1 of fiscal year 25 from our programs team. And then lastly, we included the IPC report for the Q4 of last year. We've got one more year of reporting with IPC, but that is the last of FY24. So those are the report outs. Thank you, Chair Reed.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, concerns about any of that? Okay. So moving on to, so we don't need, there's no motion on that, right? Like, wait, just,
That's correct. Yeah,
that's just
reporting
information,
out.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just double checking. So let's see, moving on to, let's see, committee updates and recommendations. Oh, is Tom with us, or John is going to handle this? Audit, compliance, and governance?
Let me see, if Tom is not on the line, we'll turn it to Jane Murphy.
Oh, Jane, of
lead
course.
us through it.
Great. Hey, Jane,
Good
you're
morning.
on.
Good morning. The highlight of my year is everything happens for the accounting unit on the in the October board meeting, and I'm going to walk through our 2024 ACFR, Annual Comprehensive Financial Report. I'm going to run through some highlights, then do some financial highlights, talk about our auditors' required communications, and give you their contact should you want to reach out directly. Next slide, please. Something that happened for the fiscal year 24 that you're going to see quite differently within the financial statements is that our tax equity programs for Solar Lease 2 and Solar Lease 3 switched ownership so that they're now 100% owned by Connecticut Green Bank through Sepia Solar Services. So what you're going to see is where previously we had the presentation below with discretely presented component units, Lease 2, Lease 3, and services. We are now reporting all of our entities as primary government. So you'll see a lot of missing columns in this year's financials. But what you will see in the footnotes for the presentation of the consolidation into primary government is all of the detail for the subsidiaries that used to be on the higher level statements before. So the equity from these subs has moved over and become part of primary government. They are no longer considered discretely presented component units because of the ownership and the control ultimately by the CGB board. Next slide, please. As part of our audit this year by PKF O'Connor Davies, our third year with them, we are going to be receiving an unmodified opinion. The review on our ACFR, which you can see here, is growing in size every single year. They do the audit with respect to the financial section at the front part of the report. They do have full responsibility on all of the financial statements and the footnotes. But towards the end of it, there is some required supplementary information regarding pensions, what they do a limited review of, and there is an introductory section and a statistical section, which carries 10 years worth of historical data that they do not have any responsibility for opining on. Next slide, please. I'm going to run over some of the financial highlights, starting with our revenue. Year over year, it increased by 0.5 million. One of the things to note this year that is a first for the Green Bank is that our private revenues have exceeded our public revenues. Our public revenues being the utility remittances and the Reggie auction proceeds by almost 5 million this year. So this is putting us well on our way with our sustainability plan that we developed a number of years ago. And you can see directly with that, our interest income has increased 1.9 million year over year. And most of that is due to new program loans and project loans that have come on the books and are generating these private revenues for us. Also, year over year, energy system sales are up 1.6 million. This particular set of systems was sold to Inclusive Prosperity Capital. You'll see an offsetting item within our operating expenses for the exact same amount. because we do sell those at our incurred costs. Also in our other income, it's up 0.8 million year over year. The biggest pieces of those are our reimbursements that we receive from the utilities for our energy storage solutions program, and also with the volume of CPACE projects that have been closing and beginning to fund this year, we have seen an increase in our CPACE closing fees. Offsetting those are the Reggie auction proceeds are down year over year by a little under 4 million. And that is due to us capping the amount of proceeds that the Green Bank pulls in at 5.2 million, which is along lines of our historical actuals, and the excess is going to DEEP's cheaper program. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Operating expenses increased by 5.8 million year over year. The biggest piece of that is in the program general and administrative expenses. And within that, the big driver is increases in the pension and OPEB's costs, which are determined by actuaries at the state level, and we are allocated our share, being a quasi-public. Although these were a benefit to our earnings this year, it was not quite as much as it was last year. So there was an actual increase in the expenses. Also, you can see the offset here for cost of goods sold on energy systems, which matches what we see for the system sales on the revenue side. We have a 0.7 million increase in loan losses, and due to the increases in our loan portfolio this year, which is driving our private revenues, we're also having to put up loan losses to reserves to support those investments should anything happen in the future. Also, we have a decrease in our grants and incentive programs. Most of what happens in that line item has to do with our RSIT program incentives, the largest of those, which are the PBIs, performance-based incentives. And as that program is winding down, we're seeing a decrease in those incentives. Any questions?
Hi, Jane. I had a question just on when people retire from the Green Bank, do they get, is it a defined benefit pension that they receive?
There is, yes. There's different tiers, and within the tiers of the Green Bank employees, we have some tier 2A, tier 3, and tier 4. And depending on which tier you're in, there is a different benefit definition. And those are taken into account when the actuaries do the valuations.
Okay, so and that benefit doesn't change based on the fund that supports it. That's just they just get the same amount every month, correct?
Yes, there are COLAs involved with the payments as well. But it would be, the formula that happens upon retirement determines the benefit, and then based on when you actually retire would determine when a COLA would take effect. I think people retiring now in tier 3 and tier 4 have to wait, I believe, 37 months for the first COLA, whereas tier 2 people, I believe, get there sooner.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Off to our non-operating revenues. They're fairly consistent year over year, increased by 0.3 million. The big driver of this one is the gain or loss on disposal of assets. We had a couple of commercial systems that had been giving us problems over the years, and ultimately panels came off the roof for those for St. John's and Ukrainian Home. These really were the first commercial systems that we'd ever had disposals on. We regularly are having disposals for the residential systems. Also, what flows through there for the residential systems is the lease buyouts, where the residential folks have the option after 5 years of buying out their system. So those are reasonably regular. The commercial write-offs were not a normal course of business for us. The interest expense is coming down slightly, as you would expect, as our bond balances are coming down as well, and our debt balances. And for the interest rate swap, we had, because of the elevated interest rates, we are flipping from income last year to expense this year. Net position increased 24.7 year over year. Most of that is within the unrestricted net position. And that increase of about 29 million was mostly due to the operating income we had this year of 26.4 million. Because of the tax equity program buyout, you will see that the non-expendable portion of our net position is no longer required, and that is flipping up to the other categories within our earnings, within our net position. You'd also see that the increase in the investment in capital assets is due to the assets that we have in the SL2 and SL3 programs. Also, the restricted for energy programs is the cash accounts that are sitting within CGB and Shrek Warehouse, as those are restricted for collateral for a line of credit that we have, and also for all of the bonds that we have, the amounts that we are required to keep in those per the indentures. Questions? Okay. We get an annual communication from the auditors, which once the audit has been issued, I'll be passing on to the board. And it talks about some of the items that have occurred during the year. One of them is where we use estimates in preparing the financial statements. The biggest of those, of course, is between the pension and the OPEB's liabilities, and those I had spoken about previously are actuarially determined, and the allocation of those are given down to the various quasis for them to use in their financials. We also estimate an allowance for uncollectible accounts, and that does also include the loan loss reserves that we spoke about earlier. And another item we have is our asset retirement obligation, which takes into account at the end of life for the solar assets that we own. It will allow us to be able to take that in our books without having large losses as we dispose of those. The letter will also disclose that our disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. Every year, management representations are requested from myself and Brian, and we will give those upon approval of the report. We have no material uncorrected misstatements, and PCAF O'Connor Davies is independent. There is a small adjustment that they have passed on for us back probably at least since 2013, when we had the tax equity programs. we had been putting our deferred financing fees. They were actually booked on a FASB basis instead of a government GAAP basis. I believe the amount is that it would have affected the financials is about 172,000 this year, and that will continue to drop each year going forward. Any questions? Okay. Our primary contacts for the audit this year are Joseph Sanafani and Catherine Cottonod, both of whom are partners. And should you have anything that you don't feel comfortable approaching me or Brian Garcia with, you can reach out to them directly. And those are their contact right on the screen. Anything else before I ask to move resolution 6?
This is John Harity. I just wanted to say this is as it always is, just an awful lot of work done extremely well, and congratulations on that. And it's not every job that has someone come in and then say, yes, you've done a good job. But we have auditors that can confirm what a good job you've done, and thank you for that.
Thank you. And I thank my team for doing a fantastic job getting things done very timely this year. Every year we get better at it.
I have to just say that Jane, in a private conversation we were having, just talking like one day she might retire. And I said, no. We know where you live, and we're always going to know where you live.
Hey, I just moved. I just moved. Nobody knows where I live.
We'll find you. We'll track you down. No, you're not only that, and the little notes that you put next to things and everything. No, you really, really are amazing, and the way you pull together the subcommittees to get all this done, fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you. With that, I'll raise resolution 6. The ACG committee has already approved. They've recommended that the board approve the draft of the ACFR with no adjustments, no further adjustments that would affect any of material effect the change in financial position of the Green Bank. Sorry about that. And back to you for a vote, Chair Reed.
Yes, do I hear a motion to approve resolution 6?
So moved, John Harity.
Thank you, John. Do we hear a second?
This is Dominic. I'll second.
Thank you, Dominic. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you, everybody. Moving on.
And I am still up.
Oh, goody.
Earlier this week, on Tuesday, the auditors of public accounts released our audit report for FY22 and FY23. And for the first time in the Green Bank's history, we have no findings. It is our first audit. And you can see the summary off to the left with the lovely zeros in findings, and repeat findings are 0. And then also the 2 recommendations that we had from our prior audit have been implemented. And I'm very proud of all the work that CGB has done. This is not just a financial audit. They look at controls. They look at compliance with statutory reporting, things like vacation approvals. They can look down to just about anything. And I want to thank Brian Garcia and Brian Farnan for creating a culture of compliance here at the Green Bank that enables us to have a clean audit report like this. Back to you, Chair Reed.
Okay, so we don't have to, so that's That's just recognizing the audit, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Just double
No vote.
checking.
No vote.
Double
no
checking.
vote.
Double checking. So let's see. So 4B, Budget Operations and Compensation Committee. We've done employee handbook proposed revisions. Who's going to talk about that?
I will give the introduction and then Joe Buonanata will go through the details.
Okay.
So we worked with both the Audit Compliance and Governance Committee and the Budget Operations and Compensation Committee based off of their separate remits to review some updates to the employee handbook. We have a couple of quick clarifications. I think there was a website address that needed to be updated. We clarified our policy around Microsoft Teams as we've evolved as an organization, rely on that more. We're mandating employees be logged on when they're working. But then we have two more substantial policy updates that we're bringing to you for review today. The first is an updated telecommuting policy based off of everything everybody is well aware of over the past couple of years with COVID and workforces across the country, across the world being more flexible. We found ourselves needing to update policy to be in line with kind of where we were. We had a flexible policy, but we needed to standardize to make sure that we were being fair, but also wanting to remain competitive with other organizations. So we've done that and are bringing that to you today. We reviewed that with the committees or with BONC. And while there wasn't a quorum, we did have some positive reviews there. Also, we're bringing an updated paid parental leave policy, which will grant employees with 8 weeks of paid leave. This was also reviewed by BONC with positive reviews. We are looking at this right now as a way to provide benefits that compete with organizations who we're competing with for talent. And we want to make sure that we can retain or attract and retain the talent that we need to achieve our mission. For the details, I'll hand it over to Joe Buonanata.
Great, thanks, Eric. Good morning, everyone. I'm Joe Buonanata, Associate Director of Operations. So first, just going through the telecommuting policy in a bit more detail. The Green Bank currently and strives to continue to provide a flexible and customized telecommuting option for all employees. And to that end, we're looking to categorize all positions across the organization in these 4 categories that are up on the screen. The first, and I'll walk through them in a bit of detail. The first category, essential in-office. These are employees whose job responsibilities are largely focused on in-office activities. So we would allow for them to telecommute partially, so 2 days per 5-day work week, but be in the office 3 days. The second category is where the bulk or the majority of the staff will be. This is the workplace flexibility category. These are employees whose job responsibilities require frequent in-person meetings and events throughout the state of Connecticut. So that would be a 2-day per week policy of in-office work and 3 days remote. Category 3, hybrid workplace. This is for employees whose primary residence is greater than 60 miles from the employee's assigned Green Bank office, either Hartford or Stamford, and whose position is deemed eligible for greater flexibility. And this is deemed by the employee supervisor with the approval of Brian, the president and CEO, Eric, the vice president of operations and human resources. The fourth category, part-time. These are employees who are positions are deemed necessary only on a part-time basis. So a minimum of 20 hours per work week and 32 hours maximum. So a couple of notes. Travel and lodging reimbursable for regular business. So this just means standard travel to the office, standard commuting. That is not applicable to any of these categories except for the part-time category as required and pre-approved by a manager. But travel and lodging for special events, so meaning meetings out of the office, events or conferences, that is applicable to all categories. And then All of these categories, positions in all categories, are eligible for the for advancement to the director level. But there's a nuance on the eligibility for senior staff or senior leadership within the organization. The categories 1 and 2, those are eligible. Category 3, the hybrid workplace, that is based on position. So director level or higher positions that are leading programs outlined within the Green Bank's comprehensive plan are not eligible for advance or placement on the senior staff if you're in category 3, the hybrid workplace. And then part-time employees are not eligible for placement on senior staff either. To put some parameters around category 3, the hybrid workplace, we're limiting that to 15% of the staff. So right now we're a staff of 61, so it'd be nine employees that would be capped at that. And it would be 45 days per year in the office in that category. So we would be looking at that on a calendar year basis and just tracking it through timesheet approvals. And then important to note across all categories is that we would continue to consider requests for medical exemptions to this policy as they come in and as necessary. So I think that captures that. Any questions that I can help answer on telecommuting?
Joe, I'm just curious.
This is go ahead.
Just curious, is this a dramatic change from prior policy, and what sort of reaction or what kind of feedback have you gotten from the staff on this?
Yeah, good question. So our current policy is for employees to be in the office 2 or 3 days per week. And so some employees are coming in twice, some employees are coming in 3 times. And so this is just kind of putting a little bit more guidelines on it. We think it's a definite flexible policy and should not. We've kind of had initial conversations with some staff as well as the BOD committee, and haven't received much pushback. Any other questions? Yep.
Well, this is John Harity. I just wanted to say that the parental leave policy and extending that to dads is just great. You know, I did not have that one for my 3 children, and I really it was a different world then, and it's good to see that recognition of the importance of those first few weeks for dads as well as moms. So that's a great thing.
Thanks so much, and that's a perfect transition. So to the just details on that paid parental leave policy. So we're looking to enact our very first paid parental leave policy for the organization. This is to enable Green Bank employees to care for and bond with a newborn, newly adopted, or newly placed child. This Green Bank paid parental leave policy will run concurrently with current leaves that are available, and so staff. Currently, there's no Green Bank policy around specific to paid parental leave, and so staff are using a combination of FMLA, the state and federal, state and or federal FMLA, the Connecticut paid leave program, and then our organization's short-term disability leave. How this would work, eligibility would be all employees of the Green Bank who are full or part-time and have been employed by the Green Bank for at least 6 months would be eligible for this policy. As Committee Chair Harity mentioned, this is applicable to both parents. So you can either have given birth to the child or be the spouse or committed partner of the birthing parent. You can have adopted a child or been placed with a foster child under age 17. We did note that it excludes any adoption of a new spouse's child. The amount of time is eight weeks or 320 hours, which can be used in hourly increments within the first 12 months of either the birth or placement or adoption. And each hour is paid at 100% of the employee's regular pay. The employee would be working closely with Human Resources to make sure that this combination of Green Bank paid parental leave and any other leaves that they're taking that the pay would not exceed 100% of their regular pay. And then upon termination or separation with the employee, any unused parental leave will not be paid out. So that's important to note because our policies around things like vacation time do get paid out to a point, whereas this would not. And when we proposed this policy initially, or when we mentioned it initially, rather, to one of the board subcommittees earlier this year, some of the feedback that we received was just a note on looking at what other employers are doing. And so did a little bit of research and had conversations with colleagues in other industries. And it's rare to see a organization not have a parental leave policy nowadays. And they really range. They range from what I saw in Connecticut from as little as 4 weeks up to 12 weeks or even more. And so our 8-week policy we felt is kind of right in the middle of that and a good tool for both attracting and retaining employees. So happy to take any additional questions.
There's a question from Joanna.
Sure.
Let's see, Joanna, you there?
Oh, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Perfect. Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, clicked the wrong button. Is there currently a flex time policy at the Green Bank?
What do you mean by a flex time policy?
Sort of, it could be either from you have core working hours, and then you could shift either lower or earlier or later to accommodate other obligations, or accomplishing 40 hours throughout the week, where one day might be longer than another.
We have a flex time policy in that respect, not really across days, but just within a day to make people's working hours more flexible to balance work and life.
And will the difference between the employees that would be 3 days in office and the employees that would be 2 days in office, are those going with the job specifications or the classes, and so that it'd be consistent across employees that are holding the same job duties, or another way to make sure that it's applied fairly?
Generally, yes. Other questions or concerns on either parental leave or telecommuting? All right. Well, with that, Madam Chair, I hand it back to you to move for Resolution 7.
Thank you, Joe. So I'm hearing no more questions or concerns. Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 7?
I'll move. Jody Nicola.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
This is Dominic. I'll second.
Thank you, Dominic. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay, thank you. Moving on. So financing programs, updates, and recommendations. Who's going to take that?
Mackie
Good morning,
Dyke.
Chair Reed. This is Mackie Dykes. I'll step in
Mackie.
here first.
Excellent.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Got a few items from financing programs this morning. First is an update on our progress to targets for first quarter of this fiscal year, which ended at the end of September. I'll first direct your attention down to the line item breakout. So the commercial lease, that's our, well, actually, let me say this is a little different from years past. We're trying to, with the growing sort of work and projects coming from our solar MAP program, and the fact that, that's really a separate team that's working on those, as opposed to our PPAs and leases that come directly from customers or contractors. We're trying to set up a structure that, sort of appropriately, a goal structure that appropriately reflects how the teams are structured and how the work actually happens. So our PPAs and lease, our solar PPAs and solar and storage PPAs and leases are spread across a couple different line items here. You see 3 solar map that reflects the different areas that we focus on, and then 1 commercial lease, which is, again, also includes the PPA, and that's all the projects that come from our work directly with primarily contractors, but we do get some property owners that come to us that want to find their own contractor, just work outside the solar map process. The commercial lease slash PPA, that first line item, also includes the lending that we do to other solar owners. So that's where, we have minimal involvement in the project. It's really once they get it constructed or purchase it, we put term debt, sometimes construction, but this really would reflect just term debt to those owners. And the goals in that line item actually for this year solely consist of that. That's where we expect the activity to happen with the lease and PPA outside of solar map, is all that lending that we do to third parties. You'll see right now it's no activity yet this year. We are actively working on debt facilities with Skyview and Down East. It's close to 13 million total. So we hope to get those in place this year, and then start to see projects reflected here as they draw down on those debt facilities. I'll skip to, since I'm talking solar PPAs and leases, I'll skip to the map side. You don't see any numbers here, but that's because of the new structure that I mentioned. We're still trying to get the data and databases to all work together and create all the Salesforce infrastructure we need to count projects under this new structure. So we actually do have some good progress made in the solar map program towards these goals. First, on the multifamily front, I'm incredibly pleased to announce that we have closed our first 2 projects for the multifamily sector for solar map. These are with the Housing Authority of Hamden. It's just over between 200 and 300 kilowatts. And we're working on a third with the Housing Authority, and then also have a pipeline of almost 3 megawatts that we're working through the Byzantine world of multifamily housing and all the state and federal agencies that subsidize those to get the appropriate documentation in place. But again, we've closed 2, have a number behind that, and are planning to get our first RFP out for construction of those projects in this quarter. And then on the municipal side, we have closed the 1 project that we hope to see. This is a ground-mounted system in Brantford. Ended up being a little bigger than we thought. It's just under 1 megawatt for a cost of 2.4 million. So we've actually already hit that municipal goal. And then on the state side, haven't actually closed anything there. We have several NRES bids in, although the NRES has gotten incredibly competitive, and these state projects are tougher ones. So, I think the odds are less than 50% that we actually get the NRES bids to make those projects happen. And then on the CPACE front, in good shape from a project perspective. These are, we have in CPACE, we have our lending, and then we have the private lenders where we serve the administrative role. Those are combined here. These 4 projects that we've closed are all projects that we've been the lender. Some of the bigger third-party projects, we do primarily small ones. The private market does the large projects. We haven't seen any of those yet, which is why you see the capital deployed target so much lower in terms of the percentage to target. But we actually just closed this quarter a $10 million one and have a few on the horizon. So I think we're in good shape on the CPACE front. And then on SBEA, right where you want to be in terms of around 25% progress to target as you're 25% of the way through the year. So overall, on our performance, I think we're in a good shape. I think the one, you look at that top line item, the area you'd focus on and maybe ask questions about is that 7.7% progress to target on our capital deployed. But again, that's because of the projects that haven't closed. It's the larger ones that haven't. That's primarily the CPACE and the state projects. Those tend to be very lumpy and large projects. But in terms of the pipeline, especially on the CPACE side, I think we're in good shape. So I'll pause there for any questions. Great. Okay, then I will turn it over to Elise to present on our CPACE project for this meeting.
Great. Thank you, Mackie. Good morning, everybody. So we have a transaction for conditional approval this morning in Danbury, Connecticut. So this is the Portuguese Cultural Center. The Portuguese Cultural Center is a nonprofit member organization for individuals and families that supports events, weddings, concerts, etc., and also runs a successful restaurant that's available to the public. And they are looking to install almost a 300 kW carport solar PV system in their parking lot. We can go to the next slide. So just to give you a quick overview of the terms, they're looking for a 20-year term. The interest rate, loan-term interest rate would be 5.75%, and we would be funding just over $1.2 million for them to do this project. And for this next column here, financial metrics, I'm going to pass it to David Beach, who is the primary underwriter on this project. Go ahead, David.
Thanks, Elise. Yeah, I just want to highlight a couple financial metrics. The property is valued at about $4.8 million, and there is not a mortgage left on the property. They recently fully repaid their mortgage. So the loan to value and lien to value are the same at about 25%. And we have a very strong debt service coverage ratio above 5%. I also will just make one note here that there was a diligence item that the Green Bank was not able to fully wrap up prior to submitting this memo to the board. But because this project has faced a couple of delays and is ready to be constructed, we wanted to get this to the board. So the approval for this project is going to be conditional on us having a meeting with the property's CPA to review this final item some point in the next week or two. But we wanted to get it to the board in advance. So if you see that on the resolutions, that's what that is about. So wanted to make a note of that and then just pass it back to Elise to close us out. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, David. So the energy metrics here, we've got a good SIR at 1.17. You can see over $2 million in savings, and the estimated annual savings, that's kind of the average annual savings there of $86,000 per year. They have secured an NRES award. They have a medium netting tariff. And of course, they're eligible for the direct pay of the ITC. So if we go to the next slide, just showing you the cash flows. It's a little bit blurry, sorry about that. But showing you the cash flows here. So the first two columns, you're seeing the netting tariff savings through the rec revenue as well as the electric savings. We're showing you the ITC there, which is based on a 40% ITC. That's the 30% base, as well as the energy community adder, 10% adder for 40%. Danbury is located in an energy community, so they automatically qualify for an additional 10%. And I will note, we didn't include it in our underwriting just to be on the conservative side. Excuse me, but the contractors are also striving for an additional adder, another 10% for domestic content. which there's a lot of parameters around that. So it can be a little bit tricky to get. So we didn't include it in the cash flows, but of course, an additional 10% in the direct pay would bump this up even more, make it look even better. So then focusing here on the cash flows, you can see they look pretty good over the years, and that's because we've got the direct pay of the ITC happening in year 2. So we've sculpted the amortization schedule to kind of follow what those savings are going to look like. So when they're receiving that ITC, sculpting the amortization schedule so they're paying that down, which both reduces our risk and also reduces the amount of interest that they have to pay. So really a win-win there, and ends up in a strong SIR with only a very few number of years that have negative cash flows. And I think that's it. Unless there's any questions, I'll pass it back to Reed.
I have a question. This is Kim Morse.
Yes, Kim, go ahead.
Thank you. Is there a minimum loan to value? Well, first, if I could clarify lien to value. So if there's a balance on their mortgage loan, you would factor that in to the lien to value. Is that how that works?
Yeah, so lien to value represents just the C-based lien as a proportion of the value of the property, whereas loan to value is all property secured debt. So that would include both the C-based lien and if there's any mortgage.
If there was
in
mortgage.
this case, there's no mortgage left. Those are the same value.
Okay. And is there a target number that you're looking for there?
Yeah, our general underwriting is we look for a lien to value below 35%, but we'll all the way up to 65% under certain conditions. And that criteria for loan to value is 80%.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions or observations, concerns?
This is Joe. I had one question on your electric savings calculation, the forecast. What do you use for the forecasted electricity price, and how often do you update those forecasts?
Yeah, so we use a combination of the numbers that the contractor puts together. So they'll look right at the electric bill and come up with a number for what they're using for their proposal, essentially, and what they're putting together for the customer in terms of their electric usage. We have a third-party group of engineers that acts as the technical administration partner for the C-PACE program. They're responsible for reviewing all of those calculations that the contractor puts together, basically to ensure everything looks fair and reasonable. So they're double checking to make sure that energy cost number is correct. And then we use a kind of industry standard escalator of 2.99% every year for that electric price. So we're assuming electric prices are going to go up, and we use that to 2.99% per year. We did look at that number, I want to say, within the last 3 years. DNV, who acts as our technical administration partner, they'll every so often go back and look to make sure that that escalator is still kind of the industry standard. It has been for the last decade or so, but they will do that kind of back of the napkin analysis every couple of years for us.
Okay, any more questions? Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 8?
So moved. This is Kim Morse.
Thank you, Kim. Do I hear a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Excellent. Moving on, that's the investments, updates, and recommendations. That sounds very Bert Hunter. Bert, are you there?
I am
and
here,
Fiona,
Chair.
and Fiona too, I should say.
Right. Yeah, I'll be handling this this morning. Although Fiona Stewart Jimenez has been assisting. Good morning to the directors. Before we go into this chart and this slide, I just want to bring the board up to date. We're continuing to work with Capital for Change, which is the largest community development financial institution in the state, along with Webster Bank and M&T Bank, to agree the terms and conditions for a funding facility for Capital for Change to fund their Smart E-loans. Currently, that facility is being provided jointly by the Green Bank and Amalgamated Bank, but it is frozen at a level of $30 million, which is not sufficient for Capital for Change to expand in the market. As a result, they've been looking for a larger facility. Webster Bank and M&T are the best option. They're trying to sort out final terms and conditions. But as a result, until that is done, there's no more capital for C4C to apply to Smarty loans. So they have been out of the market since last December, about a year ago. That's really been an impact to our progress in the market. Although we are continuing to increase the Smarty loan deployment, we think we would make more progress if they were in the market. And as once a number of the incentives on the federal side and plus from DEEP, which are anticipated in 2025, we're getting concerned that these parties need to come together. So the Green Bank has been talking to Capital for Change about some of their concerns about not enough margin in the program that their finance committee has raised. So one of the suggestions that we came up with at the Green Bank was to say, if the Green Bank could lend a bit disproportionate to what Webster and M&T would be doing. It was originally structured as a 50-50 facility. It would still, when fully deployed, be 50-50. But the Green Bank could, on a near-term basis, lend up to $5 million more than what a strict 50-50 share would be, with private capital catching up to us over a number of months. Then Capital for Change could have a lower funding cost for that period of time. And that's what this chart and this slide really speaks to. You can see that the July proposal, which was approved by the board, resulted in a blended rate between the Green Bank and private capital, Webster M&T, at 5.15%. As a result of the decline in interest rates by the Federal Reserve, that's now down to 4.9%. If the Green Bank can be disproportionate up to $5 million, that would allow the blended cost to drop to 4.77%. So that benefit, we think, could be enough to get the parties to close in on a transaction, get this facility documented by December, so that C4C can be back in the market by January, which is our target. So that's what we bring before the board today for approval. I'm happy to take any questions.
Bert, this is John Harity. Just an observation that it is incredible that Capital for Change has been basically inoperable for like a year. This is just, I mean, do people not realize the urgency of these matters? It's just, it astounds me sometimes how lackadaisical people are in the face of what's a real impending and ongoing emergency in terms of climate. So anything we can do to help move this off the dime is like just really important.
Thank you, John. And that's the idea here, is to say, look, we're willing to try to move the ball here and get the parties to come together. We think it's a meaningful difference. The CEO, when I spoke with her, Diane Smith, she was appreciative of the idea, and hopefully something like this can get folks over the line.
Are Tom Flynn or Matt on? Matt Rinelli? No. Okay. I thought it was awfully quiet. Are there any other questions, concerns, observations? Okay, hearing none. Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 9?
So moved, John Harity.
Thank you, John. Do I hear a second?
This is Dominic. I'll second.
Thank you, Dominic. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
I think David Beach is going to be up with the next transaction.
Okay, David.
Thank you, Chair Reed. This is a project, a fuel cell and thermal loop project in Bridgeport that is owned by Scale Microgrids. We brought this project to the board in July and are coming back to give a couple updates on some slight changes to the structure and to request approval for the Green Bank to participate in expansion of the bridge loan. So after this project was approved in July, Investec, one of the lead arrangers, noted to the lenders that Scale must submit a compliance filing to PURA after the project has been placed in service that outlines the final cost of the project to ensure that the calculated rate base and therefore the resulting net income in future years aligns with the final project costs. If for whatever reason that compliance filing is not accepted, then the rate base will be based on the costs that are originally in the PPA, which was signed in 2020. And those costs are no longer up to date because of cost increases due to inflation and other factors. So to get a better understanding of this requirement, Scale works with a Connecticut law firm that has experience in these matters. And that law firm wrote an opinion or a memo, and in their opinion, they noted that this post-commercial operations compliance filing should not be subject to the authority's approval, and a decision to disapprove the updated costs would be inconsistent with the terms of the PPA. However, they also noted that because of the uniqueness of the project, there is no PURA precedent that illustrates with certainty the expected treatment by the authority of this compliance filing. So using that knowledge, a couple of edits were made to the structure of the credit facilities. So going up to our table here in the second row, construction term loan, you can see that the original amount was $83.3 million. That has been updated for the construction loan to $72.9 million. That updated figure was chosen because if the original cost in the PPA become the rate base, the net income would be enough to cover that amount, if that amount converts to term, at a 1.0 debt service coverage ratio. So the lenders are covered in that scenario. And then in the credit agreement was included an accordion feature. So after the project has been placed in service, and if and when PURA accepts this filing, then the lenders will increase their amount lent up to the 83 million, which is right around the original amount. And Green Bank is expected and has committed to $6.5 million of the construction loan, and then would increase with the accordion facility up to 7.4 million. This change also had some effects on the bridge loan. So as we originally brought this to the board, the bridge loan was around $27 million. And that was based on sizing relative to the amount Scale expected to receive if they were to sell the investment tax credits, based on about assuming they would get about 90 cents on the dollar, which is a pretty fair estimate. Though saying that, Scale has always expected to sign a tax equity partnership and receive tax equity proceeds, which are expected to be significantly larger than if they were to sell the tax credits, and also be a little bit more certain because they're not having to go out into the market to sell, but would have a signed partnership agreement. Those proceeds are expected to be larger because tax equity investors are able to take advantage of depreciation, which adds a significant amount of value. So the original bridge loan, however, was never contemplated to increase based on the increased proceeds expected from the tax equity investment. And that was because if you look down in the equity row, in the original amount, Scale's equity was about 16%, and the minimum equity requirement for Scale was 15%. So the bridge loan wasn't able to expand in relation to that increased value associated with signing a tax equity partnership. However, because the construction loan has now been decreased, Scale is no longer bumping up against that minimum equity percentage. So the lenders are able to lend additional funds now up to 39 million, which would happen after the tax equity partnership is signed, and the lenders would have a chance to review those documents and also underwrite the tax equity investor. And so what we are bringing to the board is for the Green Bank to participate in that expansion. As the documentation is currently, the Green Bank is only committed to $2.5 million in the bridge loan, which is in alignment with the original amount. But we are proposing for the Green Bank to participate in that expansion if it happens, which would be an additional $900,000, bringing our total in the bridge loan to 3.4 million, and the total lent by the Green Bank in the construction portion of the project to 9.9 million, which is within the original approval of not to exceed $10 million. And then that would drop down to a maximum of 7.4 with the term loan. So I will pause here if there are questions before turning it back to Cherry.
This, when I was still in the legislature and chaired energy, one of the final things that State Representative Ezekiel Santiago asked for and fought for was this thermal loop. So maybe 2017, 2018, it's been a while. And he suddenly died of a heart attack at the age of 45 and was just a wonderful, wonderful legislator who loved his city. And so I keep looking at this project, waiting for it to, be fully engaged. So thank you for that. Questions, observations, concerns? Okay.
Actually, Chair Reed, I just wanted to come on top of your previous comment. Remember those days when the Bridgeport delegation was very much behind the thermal loop and the need for a thermal utility, which New Power won, that got that accommodation from the legislature. So this transaction does have a long history. It was good to see this transaction close earlier this month. So it is actually on its way. So this is just a modification that would involve us, but the financing has actually been finalized. So they're well underway to completing the facility. Just want to make sure that was clear to the board. Thank you.
That's great, and it's everything that we all want. It's recycling and reutilizing all of the waste energy and plugging it back into the system.
Yes, and the innovation here is it uses circulating hot water as opposed to steam. So it's not a high pressure system as is the Hartford loop. So the infrastructure is buried just a few feet below ground. It's very easy to install in that regard. So we're hoping that this can be set a trend for additional loops throughout the state and throughout New England.
Chair Reed, this is John Harity.
Hi, John.
To me, it's a great thing that Bridgeport, which in many ways is just sort of like a morass of a city. It's just so many problems. It should be taking the lead in something like this. It's a great sign of what we can do, and hopefully people will look at this and say, well, if Bridgeport can do it, certainly we can do it, which is the case. So my hat's off to Bridgeport for finding a way through everything in order to get this done.
Thank you, John. Any other comments, questions, concerns? Do I hear a motion to approve Resolution 10?
This is Dominic, so moved.
Thank you, Dominic. Do I hear a second?
Second, John Harity.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Lonnie, I'm going to abstain on this one. It's Joe DiNicola.
Oh, Joe. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Anybody else? Okay. Moving along. Let's see, environmental infrastructure program updates. Lee.
Yes, thank you.
You're going to give us a, hey, Lee, how are you?
Doing
Good to see you.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. And thank you, Chair Reed. The environmental infrastructure team prepared a memo to update the board on our process to identify market conditions, readiness, and opportunities across sectors, including resources needed to develop, expand, or launch new programs and markets under the Green Bank's expanded authority granted to us through Public Act 21115, an act concerning climate change adaptation. So this is an update. We don't have a resolution for you today. But as you all well know, the Act's passage in June 2021 enabled a new phase of our efforts to carry out our mission, signaling a broadened scope and deepened commitment to environmental infrastructure in addition to our focus on clean energy. This legislation has provided us a framework to innovate and mobilize investment in projects that confront climate change by addressing the urgent need for environmental infrastructure. And I just shared the statutory definition here to kind of reorient and frame where all of this is coming from. Structures, facilities, systems, services, and improvement projects related to water, waste and recycling, climate adaptation and resiliency, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, and environmental markets, including but not limited to carbon offsets and ecosystem services. Over the past 2 years, the Green Bank engaged with stakeholders across environmental infrastructure sectors and produced a series of primers to wrap our heads around each sector, key public policies, market potential, relevant funding and financing programs, and general opportunities for Green Bank engagement. I'll note our final primer on waste and recycling is anticipated this February. So the memo we've provided to you all is an update on progress and actions, including our strategy development, explorations of overarching and sector-specific financing opportunities, and some of our planned resources and activities to further explore them. I'll note at the outset, and this is very much stressed in the memo, that environmental infrastructure is still a very new focus for the Green Bank, and we anticipate that strategy and opportunities will continue to evolve as we engage with stakeholders, identify project opportunities, especially as we begin to finance initial transactions and get that experience under our belts, and to work more closely with capital partners. Also, I'll share, owing to the expansive nature of our statutory authority, our team is working to build common language and common understandings around two proposed priority subcategories, if you will, of environmental infrastructure, that being nature-based or green or natural infrastructure solutions, and gray infrastructure, which delivers both social and ecological resilience benefits. These subcategories will help to guide our initial project and market development efforts, and very importantly, avoid confusion with non-mission aligned infrastructure projects. And so as far as an update on our strategy formation, as we are working to develop financing products and programs for environmental infrastructure, we've come up with a 1-2-3 approach. That is to expand existing program offerings to include aspects of environmental infrastructure, as with our Smart E climate adaptation and resilience measures and water measures, and also CPACE resilience. Number 2, to pursue bespoke opportunities through Green Bank Capital Solutions open rolling RFP. And 3, to determine longer-term strategic program design opportunities, such as we've been exploring last session and hopefully again this session through resiliency improvement districts. I'll also note this is the first year the environmental infrastructure team has quantified progress to target metrics in the comprehensive plan. And that is for 20 Smart E resilience projects totaling $100,000 in capital deployment, and one capital solutions project with $2 million in total deployment. So I'll share just a little bit more about our strategy 1-2-3. And this is a bit of a recap for folks who have been on the board and perhaps a little orientation above, in relation to the memo. So in 2024, the Green Bank rolled out our first bundle of climate adaptation and resilience measures and water measures within the Smart E loan. This process entailed the identification and vetting of new measures with stakeholders like DEEP, attaining board approval, new contractor engagement, outreach to lending partners, and the creation of metrics for data tracking and eventual impact measurement and reporting. We've had 3 loans so far utilizing these new resilience measures, and one that I'll just highlight as an interesting one for us is a project that included the installation of a sub pump, a French drain, and the conversion of on-site impervious surfaces to pervious surfaces. I'll also note in FY 25, the Green Bank will roll out additional resilience measures as appropriate. For example, looking to bring some new measures to the deployment committee next month. As for CPACE in FY 24, the Green Bank, as the state's program administrator, amended the program guidelines to include climate resilience, allowing lenders to offer CPACE financing for those resilience measures. And we've seen one project come through with third-party financing, which utilized pervious surfaces as a stormwater management strategy. Also, number 2, pursuing bespoke solutions. As you may recall from our June board meeting, the board approved the expansion of Capital Solutions open rolling RFP from clean energy to also include environmental infrastructure. Given the vast range of possibilities for EI efforts, Capital Solutions is a really great tool for us as it provides flexibility to start identifying eligible projects and an opportunity to gain really valuable experience to inform longer-term strategic program design, such as processes for due diligence and underwriting, impact reporting, monitoring, evaluation, etc. In FY25, our team is already underway, looking to get our first project by developing a robust pipeline of prospective project investments. And as you see here, this redacted list is just a teaser, if you will, of where we are so far in exploring potential prospective investment projects under Capital Solutions. And as the Green Bank has worked to define a strategic approach to the wide-ranging scope of environmental infrastructure, it's been really important for us to maintain a broad aperture of financing tools and investment strategies for our various sectors: water, waste and recycling, agriculture, land conservation, parks and recreation, and environmental markets. Each of these sectors has, at the very least, dozens of potentially viable investment strategies. So we've been engaged in conversation, participating in working groups, developing new partnerships, and performing other stakeholder engagement activities to better understand near-term program design opportunities, as well as longer-term market and program development needs. So we capture a whole lot more on this in the memo than we have time to share with you all today. So you'll see in the memo a succinct breakdown of strategic program development explorations we've been engaged in for each of the sectors, drawing from and linking to the more detailed context of each of those primers or the Environmental Markets Guide. And to support all of these efforts and explorations, we are doing a number of things. One is guiding our efforts by an outreach, marketing and outreach plan. We'll also leverage new and existing sources of funds for capitalization in accordance with statute, extend our limited time and capacity with contractual support, engage in research topics on research partnerships, I'll say, on topics like resiliency improvement districts and also how insurance can potentially be helping to develop markets for especially nature-based solutions, resilience improvements, or recovery, and looking to guide our work with strong data inputs and to be strategic with developing impact metrics along the way. So overall, we've made good headway. We've hired and onboarded top talent, and we really look forward to keeping you updated on our progress in the year ahead. So with that, we'll welcome your questions and comments.
And Lee, I just have to say, in addition to the extensive work you've done and structuring you've done in a new job, how did you have time to have a baby? And
luckily, the having of the baby was right before I joined the Green Bank. But yes.
Well, thank you for all that you've done. It's you've really made an incredible impression and really moved us forward. So thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Okay, let's see. Moving on.
There's a question from Joanna.
Oh, I didn't see you. I'm sorry, Joanna. Go ahead.
That's okay, Lonnie. I would say I'd echo your comments, Lonnie. I'm just so excited to see where Lee has taken this and where we're going, and can't wait to see what comes next. I guess I would highlight just maybe the metrics conversation and working with the Deep Office Climate Planning, because they and myself have been on a lot of national conversations on developing on metrics and dashboards for both public communication, but also internal tracking of accomplishing our goals. So I'd love to dig deeper into that as we look ahead.
We've also drawn inspiration, Joanna, from your work on even project eligibility criteria like the PROTECT criteria behind CIRCA's climate resilience efforts. Good methodologies to draw from.
Lots of good stuff happening. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So incentive programs and updates. Sergio.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Sergio Carrillo, I'm Managing Director of the Incentive Programs. I wanted to provide a quick background on the Energy Storage Solutions Program. It's the battery storage program that launched in January of 2022. This slide shows what used to happen in any home or business prior to the launch of the battery storage program. The solar production being produced at the site, home or business, would help reduce the consumption from the grids, right? And any excess would have to be sent to the grid. And that, as I said, that happened up until the launch of this program. What batteries are really a game changer. They allow homeowners and business owners to store the energy produced on site to be used later on in the day. The battery storage program, or ESS, is no different than any other demand response program in the country, but it's very unique in the sense that it provides upfront incentives, which is the only program in the US that provides upfront incentives, and also performance incentives payable for 10 years. The graph shows what we're trying to do in ESS is basically we ask the batteries in exchange for those incentives to discharge between the hours of 3 and 8 p.m. That's going to lower the demand in those homes and businesses. So imagine this is one home or one business. Let's extrapolate these to 10,000 homes, 20,000 homes, which is what we expect to have in a few years. And then we can make a significant dent in the regional summer peak demand. That reduction in the summer peak demand will generate savings that will be then spread across all ratepayers. So those savings are going to pay for the incentives that we're providing through the program. Next slide, please. Real quick, these are the deployment targets of the program. It's a very ambitious program. The goal is to deploy 580 megawatts of battery storage by 2030. The program has been divided in 3 tranches of 3 years each, and you can see the targets. The targets are split, or the goals are split 50-50 between residential and C&I customers. Just to give you an idea, 290 megawatts of residential batteries equates to roughly 40,000 homes receiving a battery. So it's incredibly ambitious. Next slide, please. And to review real quick the progress to targets in the first quarter of the fiscal year. We have approved 407 projects. That's 22.2% of the target. From a capital deploy perspective, we are just under 20% of the target. On a megawatt basis, we are slightly under, right? It's just 11.2%, meaning that a portion of those approved projects are SMARTY, or a large component is SMARTY projects that do not have megawatts associated with them. Overall, I think we're doing well. The second portion of the slide shows the individual projects. The commercial portion of ESS, we haven't approved anything. There is a pause from Pura on project approvals. We submitted new incentives for Pura's review. There will be a draft decision coming out hopefully next Friday, and a final decision early in December, presumably effective January 1st. And we will be able to resume approvals of C&I projects. That's the reason the target is so low. It's only 5 projects. Anyways, no activity just yet. On the resi side, we have good news. We have approved 123 projects. That's roughly 25% of the target. Just to give you an idea, the goal last year for the entire fiscal year was 150 projects. So we are about to exceed the fiscal year 24 target. From a capital perspective, 16.9% of the target. And on a megawatt perspective, we're just under 25%. I think we're well on target. And SMARTY, you can see the stats, almost 300 projects, 21% of the target, similar numbers, just above, between 25 and 40% in capital and megawatts deployed. On the bottom portion of the slide, we'll show the deployment in vulnerable communities. And if you pay attention to the right-hand side of that table, we can see that the residential ESS projects have been deployed, or 40% or more of those projects have been deployed in vulnerable communities. So we're right on target. SMARTY, as I mentioned, is probably, it's a slightly under that, 23% on capital and 29% for number of projects, just slightly under. But overall, great quarter. We were very optimistic. I believe the residential portion of the program is about to take off with the addition of Tesla, who finally joined the program, and they submitted 150 applications. Posigen has finally started to sell or to install batteries, where we have approved roughly 40 projects for Posigen. 100% of these projects are in underserved or LMI households. So incredibly good news. We also welcome Sonova into the program. So there seems to be, this seems to be the year where residential will take off finally. There are other not so good news, and you may have heard about these, and it's the SunPower bankruptcy. There are about 100 projects in the program that use SunPower batteries. We're working with the SunPower Bankruptcy Council to understand if there is a plan for these batteries, if they will continue to receive warranties and service from SunPower or the company purchasing those assets. Anyways, we're working closely with SunPower to understand what will happen. But anyways, we're keeping an eye on it, and we'll keep you posted. Next slide, please. And how is the project doing to date? And on the resi side, as I mentioned, it's been very slow for the first 3 years. Of the 50 megawatts of capacity in the first tranche, we approved roughly just under 5 megawatts, only 10% of the capacity. It's been underwhelming. As I mentioned, the addition of Posigen, Sunrun, Sonova, Tesla is going to help us. I think this is what we needed to allow the program to take off. But on the C&I portion, on the non-residential portion of the program, the program has been incredibly successful. We blew past the 50 megawatts of capacity from tranche 1 by March of 2023. We had to go to Pura to allow us to open tranche 2. It was supposed to open in January of 2025, and we did. We opened that, and by June of this year, we had allocated all available capacity in tranche 2. Actually, we went over the 100 megawatts, and we approved 113.9 megawatts of capacity, given that there is some attrition in tranche 1. And you can see there's an attrition of roughly 30% of the projects. So understanding that there will be attrition in tranche 2 as well is inevitable, we decided to approve more than 100 megawatts. The biggest issue here is the interconnection queue. So you can see here, of the 150 megawatts that we have approved, only 1.3 megawatts have come online, just 4 very small projects. These projects are large in size, multiple megawatts of capacity, and these projects sit in the interconnection queue for months and months, if not years. So at this point, it is the biggest barrier to deployments, without a doubt, the interconnection queue. So we're working with the utilities, with Pura. We're part of the interconnection working group, trying to find solutions to this issue. So let me stop there. Field any questions?
Yeah, this is John Harity. You're saying interconnection feuds. So these are not technical issues. These are what? Turf wars, or what how would you characterize this?
John, yes, thanks for that question. Yes, the interconnection queue is the study of these projects and their effect on the network, on the transmission and distribution networks. Seemingly, it's a very complicated process that sometimes has to be also evaluated by ISO New England, depending on the size of these projects. And it's just time-consuming and very complicated. And there are other projects in all the Northeast states, or all the states that are part of the ISO New England. So it takes years to approve these projects.
Are people trying to get this done, or are people trying to obstruct it?
I'm sorry, but who are you referring to with our people?
I mean, just all the different players that are involved. Are there people that, for whatever reason, are looking to block this, or it just seems
Yeah.
insane. 100 megawatts and 1 megawatt approved, like that's like really, there's something really wrong.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's discouraging. I feel probably the utilities could be doing more to accelerate this deployment, or the deployment of these assets. It's just not happening. I don't think they're getting very creative. They've done this evaluation for decades the same way, and they're continuing to do it that same way.
Sergio, could I just add a comment?
Yes.
Thanks. So just for some added color on the interconnection timelines, for some of these projects, which most of these battery projects are over 1 megawatt, most of them are actually over 2 megawatts. And the way that the utilities have described this to us is that a typical size Walmart is about 500 kilowatts of demand. So when you install in some cases we have 10 megawatt batteries just right in the middle of a distribution network, there's a lot that needs to be considered. So understandably, from the distribution point, it causes a lot of traffic that they're not accounting for. And anything that's over 2 megawatts has to go to a transmission study as well with ISO New England, which can actually add 2 to 3 years. They can take 2 to 3 years sometimes. And actually part of I think Sergio mentioned that there's some cancellations there. I think they're those checkered section on the graph. The projects that have fallen out so far are those that have started the interconnection study or the transmission study and realized that there's such significant upgrades needed that they have to pay for to the distribution network, that it just makes the project not pencil anymore. So that's what we're afraid of with some of the attrition so far with these really large systems.
Is there anything in legislation that would help move this along that we might propose?
Yeah, so Pura actually created, I think it was probably almost a year ago now, the interconnection working group. So it's a working group. It's now being led by a designee from Pura. And it's essentially the utilities, interconnection departments, and any developer or, including the Green Bank, who wants to join and essentially really just kind of air the issues that they experience with interconnection, which can range just from things like paperwork processing all the way up to the nature of how the studies are conducted. I'll admit that so far in the last year, I don't think any major solutions have been broken through. Unfortunately, it's a really big, complicated process that unfortunately only the utilities are really the experts in. So it is difficult for stakeholders to try to find solutions to something that is somewhat of a black box to all of us. But there is an honest effort happening in the industry.
Where are there optimistic models? I mean, is it working anywhere beautifully, or is it? I mean, it's obviously
nationwide.
We're an energy revolution, and you get pushback constantly, and also bewilderment of not really understanding all of the connection components. Is it working anywhere? Or are there models that can be utilized or copied?
Not that we're aware of, unfortunately.
That's what I thought. I mean, everybody's out there twisting in the wind at this point. So
Norway.
This is happening. This is happening
Norway.
Across the U.S., no doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sergio, you've done a major job, though. I mean, talk about starting from a total standstill, and then us being handed it, and then having Pura weigh in before they actually really fully understood what was up. And so
it's been a lot of work.
Thank you.
A possible way forward that we see here that could help boost that pink line on the non-residential is supporting more installations that are in the 100 to 500 kilowatt range that are small to medium sized commercial. They can get installed and interconnected much quicker than multi-megawatt. But I think with economies of scale, it's just developers want really, really big batteries to be installed.
Okay.
I had one, Jody Nicola again, one unrelated question to that topic, but Sergio, do we have any requirements in our funding around the battery performance, how it's used in load management? Is that a requirement of our financing, or is that independent from the work Green Bank does?
Yeah, Joe, yes. There are two, as I mentioned, there are two incentives. There are upfront incentives and performance incentives. The performance incentives that are paid for over 10 years are basically purely on the performance of the batteries, on the contribution of those batteries to the demand response events called by the utilities. So if they help lower the summer peak demand, they're being compensated for that. Otherwise, they will not receive any compensation. The upfront incentives are based on the capacity, on the installed capacity of the batteries, on the ability to respond to certain events later on. Does that answer your question?
It does. So there's no supplemental that the Green Bank's not putting a condition. It's through those existing performance incentives that you're trying to motivate the use of the battery.
Yes, correct.
Chair Reed, before we move forward, Sergio, thank you for that update. I just want to let us know we lost our quorum. Here's what I thought we would do. So Ed, Sergio, Deputy Commissioner DiNicola is with us here in the room. He is the chair of the deployment committee. So what I think we should do is go ahead and present it. It's important for him and Allison to hear about the project and some background. And we'll bring it back to the deployment committee when we have that meeting in 2 weeks. The project size and the modification will fit in the deployment committee. And then Chair Reed, on the executive session, we can just defer that to the December meeting. We can quickly do some other business updates and call the meeting to adjourn at 11 o'clock. That would be my suggestion.
Okay, that sounds good. So in other words, no executive session this time.
That's correct.
Good. Okay, just double checking. So did we want to talk about the SS transaction modification, or?
Let's do it. It'll be good education.
Let me turn it over to Ed Kranich, who's going to present these slides.
Thanks, Sergio. So this project that we're requesting modification of the upfront incentive for was brought to us by a company called Redaptive. They're an eligible third-party system owner and contractor in energy storage solutions. They joined this past spring. They're a company, they were founded in 2015, headquartered in Denver, Colorado. They're a large energy services provider contractor. So originally we had this project, this particular one, Home Depot store in Bristol, Connecticut. It was brought to us in a batch of 7 Home Depot stores that were having batteries developed by Redaptive. So this particular store, and actually all the other stores were brought to us proposing to use a Narada Power battery. It's going to be white labeled by Honeywell. Honeywell is sort of a co-developer on this project. The original system size was a 2 megawatt, 5.59 megawatt hour battery. And for this store in particular, Redaptive has requested a revision. They are going to change the equipment or the rating of the equipment, bumping it up a little bit to 6.15 megawatt hours of energy. So it doesn't change the total power capacity of the system. So it doesn't change those charts that Sergio had showed on the other side, because those are measured in power and capacity of the program. So this revision here brought the upfront incentive up about $70,000 from $663,813 to $733,438. So based on the way that the Green Bank approves these incentives, because it's over $500,000, we're bringing it to the board for their approval to modify. So the only thing that has changed here on the system really is just the capacity of the battery, which was done through a slight equipment change. And it was just run through the standard energy storage solutions, commercial and industrial size system calculator. So any questions before we proceed here? And Sergio, I don't know if there's anything else that you wanted to add on the background.
No, that's good. Good job.
Thanks, Sergio. Yeah, so we'll come back to that in deployment committee in mid-November. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair.
so that really concludes. So other business, I think that's where we are, right?
That's correct.
I just want to say quickly, I had the pleasure, the honor of accepting an award on behalf of our own Sarah Harari earlier this week. It was the 24th annual Women of Innovation event, part of the Connecticut Technology Council. And Sarah and her husband were traveling, keeping a promise to a dear friend of hers. And so she said, well, I'm not going to win, but, we wanted to make sure we covered it. So we're there, and her name is called, and they knew immediately I wasn't she. And I went up and accepted it on her behalf and told everybody, how much we value not only her, but our whole team of really, really committed, mission-driven people. And so she's, I informed her on her trip, and she's very pleased. It's a really good organization. I think there are at least 400 people there. And so I think it's something that we should make an effort to show up at on occasion when they have events. And so we're very proud of her. So congratulations, Sarah Harari. And
thank you,
congratulations
for being there.
Oh, you're there. Oh, good.
I'm here
I didn't
now.
see you. Oh, good. Oh,
Thank you so much for being there on my behalf when I was traveling. I'm very honored to have won this. So.
Oh, it was really fun, and it was really good for me. Thank you for, making it happen, because it was really good for me to catch up with. There were a whole bunch of executives there, and women entrepreneurs, and engineers, and a lot of academics. It's a a multi-layered organization, so it was really good, and I was proud to do it. Ryan?
Excellent. All right, yeah. So we're winding down here before we transition to those who are going to stay on and participate in our ethics training. But just wanted to kind of wrap up with a few kind of fun endpoints here. First on Secretary Granholm, who I would say is going to go down in history as probably the most consequential energy secretary in the history of that department, overseeing the bipartisan infrastructure law and just moving towards the restructuring of the DOE being inclusive of deployment alongside its research and development efforts. So just a couple of things. I've been on the Secretary of Energy's advisory board since late 2021, but more recently we've had several decisions that have come through CIAB that I thought would be of interest to the board. You know, the first is, as we think ahead about our greenhouse gas emission reduction targets and doing everything we can to not only produce more zero emission clean energy, but also reduce consumption on the grid, is we're facing not only moving vehicles to the grid, electric vehicles, as well as how we heat our homes using heat pumps that are going to create more demand on the grid, but we're going to see data centers start to come online as well, which a lot of people say is going to really dwarf electric vehicles and heat pumps. So they're going to create a lot of demand. And there was a fantastic working group, an artificial intelligence and data center infrastructure working group. As you can imagine, the secretary obviously wants all of these data centers to be powered by clean energy. And the working group had me review the report before it went to the full working group for recommendations. And I was like, well, hey, gang, where are, you know, we're talking about a lot of distributed energy resources here with small modular reactors and things like that. Where are hydrogen fuel cells in this equation? So obviously that's not only important to the federal government, as we heard earlier, you know, we're talking about domestic content here manufactured in the US, but also more importantly to Connecticut as we wind down our green hydrogen and fuel cell industry tour, which we had earlier this week at Nell Hydrogen. But they were like, oh yeah, of course. So fuel cells are now adequately represented in that report as an important technology that can provide high reliable power to data centers. And then secondly, we wound up our tribal and community benefits working group efforts. You know, over the last nearly 4 years, community has been front and center in the implementation of the DOE programs. You've probably heard the term community benefit agreements, community benefit plans. Bridgeport and the work of Adrian and the Bridgeport Regional Energy Partnership was among 50 projects nationally that were seeking and sought federal assistance to develop community benefit plans. So I co-chaired a working group that provided near-term recommendations for the secretary to execute by the end of this year, and then for the next administration for the following 4 years. But what was interesting about all of this process is we used artificial intelligence to help us. We did some 40, 50 interviews. We used Otter AI to record those interviews. We had a fantastic report structure that we taught AI to use in producing a report, taking all the feedback from the external stakeholders. So I think the secretary said this is probably the first time a report has been produced using AI. I would say that it probably produced 75%, but the other 25% our team really leaned in on because we had to specify the recommendations. But ultimately, in the end, there is a podcast, a Google podcast that the DOE now has posted on their website that summarizes the report. It's one of the coolest things ever that takes a lot of technical information and makes that information digestible to the masses. So very fun, good stuff happening as Secretary Granholm wraps up her 4-year term. Just wanted to update folks there. And I think that's it, Chair Reed, on our agenda.
Great. Okay, we don't have a quorum, but do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, a second?
Second, Joe.
Oh, great, thanks so much. Okay, have a great weekend, everybody, and thanks for participating. It's been a good one. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
We're adjourned.
Thank you.